In this video, we will examine a way of using state symbols or map symbols, symbols of countries or their outlines and shapes. And so these pieces of a map, ripping them out of a map and using them as say instead of points or other markers in a scatter plot or other type of visualization. And this is something you can do. So if you have some very recognizable geographic places, so if, for example, we were going to use world indicators and use miniatures of the shapes of different countries as an indicator in addition to their name to add some dimensions to our visualization, here's how you do it. And we'll follow along with the data set that you've been reading about. And so this looks at data from the 2012 US presidential election and looks at correlations of things like degree completion and education level with the candidates each state went for. So keeping in mind causation is not, correlation does not mean causation. So we're going to find and see how tightly correlated some of these things are, but it doesn't mean one causes the other. So we'll connect to our data, which is in sheet 1. And we start by actually doing a little pre-work. So one of the things we want to do is make some data slicers for our data consumers. Basically, we want to be able to create a slicer that allows our data consumers to select the influence of things like unemployment rate with how people voted, or voting behaviors. Did the state go for Romney or Obama, and how did the unemployment rate correlate with states that went for Romney or Obama? The same for urban population, high school graduation or more, bachelor's degrees or more, or advanced degrees or more. And then, so these are common things you might do, especially, if you're looking at certain product purchases or certain behaviors as you're trying to correlate. And we know one easy way of creating that kind of data slicer. And if you take a guess for a moment, I'll give you a moment. Right, you add it by creating a parameter. So we'll go into this dimensions area and right click and we'll create a parameter. This parameter will be called compare with, because we're going to ask our data consumers want to be able to query, I want to compare unemployment rate with the states that went for Obama or Romney and how that went. So this will be text-based material, so we know it's not a float, it's going to be a string. And now we know that it's going to be a list, so it's not any allowable value. And now we have to add our parameters. So unemployment rate, not rare, but rate. Urban population. High school graduate or more. Advanced degree or more. Okay. So it's important that all of these are properly spelled and created, because you're matching strings. So if your string doesn't match, you'll get 50 nulls. And so I've added my parameter, a technique you've done before. And once again, we have the parameter and we need to create a calculated field. So that parameter has something to reference. So we right-click the compare with in the parameters field. And we create a calculated field. And here's the script we're going to write. It's pretty simple. In this case, chosen demographic. Right? We want case compare with, right? Now, when unemployment rate, then we drag unemployment rate over here. Right? So in the case of when compare with, right, when is selected unemployment, then we want to use the data from unemployment rate. When it says urban population, then we want urban population. When it says high school graduate or more, then high school graduate or more. When bachelor's degree or more, then bachelor's degree or more. And when advanced degree or more, then advanced degree or more. And then we have to remind our little script to end, so we type end. Okay. Calculation is valid. Okay. Be careful. Now, while the calculation here is valid, your scripting's right. That doesn't always mean that you've matched cases. So remember, it's important to spell and match your cases here. Spell everything right and match everything. So click OK. Now we drag our chosen demographic to the column shelf. And we drag voted for Obama to the row shelf. Okay, so we now have our scatterplot region, okay? And we drag state to the level of detail. So we take state and we go level of detail. So that's right here. Now we have the little points. Now if we change this from marks, from automatic to map, you'll notice that we get the little state outlines. Now we can barely see the states, so we want to increase their size so we can see them better. Okay, so we start to see them better, maybe a little too well. Okay. Now, drag state ID here, and we'll drag that to label. So we have each state is labeled, so we know which state is which. Now we drag voted for Obama. So we want the voted for Obama here, and we want to drag that to color. Now, that's great, but that shading or that gradation doesn't really help me. So I want to definitely change that color. So if I go to color and I edit, I don't want to choose the automatic palette, right? And that's common. I probably want to use red and blue. After all, we have and we want that gradation, so I'll use red, white, and blue diverging. And we also want to set these a little differently. We want to be a little more precise. They're pretty close, but we want to go here and go to Advanced and click the Start box, and that would be 0.25, and we want to end it at 0.75, and we want our center to be right at 0.5. So what we're setting up is, right, so the start of our stepped color we want at 25%, the end is at 75%, and the center is at 50%, right? Click apply and OK. And now we'll see, we hear a lot about red states being Republican, blue states being Democrat, okay, or going for Obama. So blue states are ones that went for Obama. And then the ones that are more lightly colored, they're sitting on the fence. They're very close. So the closer you get to the other side, the lighter your color is here. The more committed your state, the more people that went or voted for Obama, or in this case against Obama. In the case of Utah, that means more that went for Romney. Okay. Now we want to add a trend line. So we have a couple ways of doing that. I can just go to analytics and I could add a trend line. Linear right there. Or I could undo that. Right click inside the field here and then just write show trend lines. Easy. Now we'll also want to add a reference line at the 50% marker voting for Obama. So we want to add a reference line, so we take the custom and we can also do this as the Y. So if we click here on the Y axis and add a reference line. Okay, we want it per pane and we want to make this a little more custom. So we'll create a new parameter and we'll call this the .5 vote for Obama. The current value will be 0.5. Display format, okay, and okay. And this is, the label is a value, not a computation. And we'll use the dashed line here. Okay. So now we have this 50% marker line right here. So right there, the state, so Florida was very close to 50-50, right? North Carolina was very close. Ohio was close. So what we can see here in this region are the swing states, right? Now, one other thing we want to do is we want to see our parameters. So we want to make sure that we show our parameter. So we want to show parameter control. So here's our parameter control, our compare with parameter control, and I'll pull that over here. And here's where we check to make sure everything works. So our unemployment rate, our urban population, our high school graduate or more, okay, bachelor's degree or more, advanced degree or more. Uh-oh, something happened. And I'm sure most of you saw me do it. I'm not very good at hiding this or doing it on purpose, but I did it. So why do I have 50 nulls? Something's going very wrong. So if I look here, advanced degree, I added 3 E's, and in my script, so when I go to my analysis and I go to edit calculated field and I look at chosen demographic, advanced degree was properly spelled. Okay? But I didn't spell it properly or correctly here, and so they don't match up. And so the computer simply says that, hey, your script says when it looks like this, it does this. But in this case, I don't see it. You're 1 letter off. And therefore, I can't complete this task. So what I have to do is I have to go back to my parameter and edit my parameter. And if I look down here, I just click in the box. I lop off that E. We're good. I click OK. And now advanced degree or more shows up. So now my visualization works. Now, if we want to see which of the 5 variables is most closely correlated with the voting record, we can click on the trend line, right? We right-click and we describe the trend model. And then you can take a look at your p-value. So now we see another way of using map shapes. And you can use map shapes for a number of things. So it's not just limited to this exercise. There's a number of ways. You can use country shapes or others. Tableau has them in their libraries, so they're very easy to pull. So you may decide. This could be anything. You could be looking at analyzing, like say, product preferences by state, sales by state, anything like this, and use these markers to liven up your images. And here's another way of using them in a scatter plot.